is a sustainable economy researcher and activist based in Lund, the university there. She's been researching this for, I think, well over a decade by now. Yes, go ahead, Jennifer.
Is this one's mine? Yes. Okay, great. Och förlåt eftersom min svenska är dålig så det är bättre om jag pratar på engelska. So I just said it's better for everybody if I speak English because my Swedish is so bad. But I'm getting there. So, today I'm going to present an alternative economic model, which you could call a well-being type of economy. It's a model, as Amanda said, that I've been developing over the past 10 years or so, which really started when I did my master's program in Lund about 15 years ago. So this was a master's in sustainability science and environmental studies, and we kept coming back to this central tension between, the central tension between the environment and the economy. Like, we can't afford to slow down the economy to protect the environment, and yet we need to invest and slow down the economy to protect the environment. So I started thinking about this question, but does the economy actually have to grow? And then I bumped in, that was back in 2010, I bumped into Tim Jackson's book, which had just been released around that time, called Prosperity Without Growth. If you haven't read it, I can highly recommend it. And that book really convinced me that no, there's no natural law that says the economy has to grow. So we just have to figure out how to reorganize the economy in ways that meet everybody's needs within the ecological limits of the planet and without having to depend on growth. Okay, so I'm going to start with, as you see, the title of my talk is An Economy That Serves People and Planet. It's not for profit. And I'm going to start with a bold claim that not-for-profit forms of business have the potential to systemically transform the economy for sustainability. Now, we're not used to thinking of not-for-profit businesses. This sort of may sound like a paradox to many of us, because we're used to thinking of non-profits or not-for-profits as organizations that rely on donations and philanthropy and grants, and then they do good things for society. What I'm talking about here is a different animal. These are not-for-profits that operate as businesses, which means they sell most of their revenue, most of their income comes from selling goods and services, like a business does. And the reason that's important is because they can replace the traditional form of business that we're all used to, which is for-profit business. So the for-profit form of business, so these are two different legal categories, for-profit and not-for-profit, and that's important when we think about accountability. Legal structures are very important. So in the for-profit form of business that make up most of our economy is made up of for-profit businesses. There's a legal purpose embedded in this structure that says that these organizations are set up to pursue private financial gain. They're set up to enrich their owners and investors. That's the key idea. And in order to do that, ownership is structured in a way that the profit can go to private owners and investors. And when I say profit, I'm talking about vinst, överskott, I think. So it's the extra money that a business has after it pays its wages and its operating expenses. So that might seem quite normal to us, but there's also an increasing number of not-for-profit businesses in the economy. And these are really different because their core purpose cannot be financial gain. Instead, they have to have a social benefit purpose. That's what they're set up to do. And the ownership is structured so that all of the profit goes to that social benefit purpose rather than to private owners. They cannot, it's not legal for them to distribute their profit to private owners. And just to make this more concrete for you, let me give you some real-world examples. So when we first started this work, there was a small group of us working on this, and we thought, well, let's sort of do a horizon scan to see if we can find not-for-profit businesses in different sectors of the economy, to see if this is actually a worthwhile model to explore. And we found them in every sector of the economy and all over the world. So this is a real estate company in Australia called Homeground Real Estate. So they manage and sell properties, that's their business part, but all of their profit goes to helping people like Rachel here. And as you can see, she says, Homeground Real Estate gave me the ability to move on with my life after being homeless for over 1.5 years. So that's the power of what profit can do when it's not piling up in the hands of private owners. Another example is renewable energy cooperatives, which are sort of popping up all over the place now. This is Somenergia, which is in Catalonia, Spain. It's a community cooperative energy company. And so all of the profit that they make from the renewable energy they sell goes back to making that energy more accessible to the community, because that's their purpose. We've even found a cybersecurity company. So this goes into, like I said, every sector of the economy. This cybersecurity company is in the Netherlands. The woman who started this company, Melanie Riebeck, has some really great talks about not-for-profit business. She's even started a not-for-profit business incubator in the Netherlands, so I can highly recommend looking her up. Here in Sweden, do we have not-for-profit businesses? Maybe people think no, but let's give you some examples. So Coop is actually a not-for-profit business. It's a cooperative. Sigtuna Stiftelsen, here's a hotel that's not-for-profit in Sigtuna, owned by a foundation. Zita Bio here in Stockholm is owned by an association. So we have a cinema. Stadsmissionen, if you've ever bought second-hand clothes at Stadsmissionen or Myrorna, these are all these are all not-for-profit businesses. SBAB is state-owned, so there's also state-owned businesses or not-for-profit. Friskis och Svettis, I'm sort of showing how you can meet a lot of your needs in not-for-profit businesses today. Folksam, mutual insurance company, Young Medlemsbank, Ekoloden for food, Ekobanken, another bank. WEAll is foundation-owned, provides electricity. And then our favorite one, Systembolaget, right? So we can buy alcohol, but their mission is actually to make sure people are informed about the risks of alcohol. And so they actually have programs to actively discourage drinking very much alcohol. So, interesting. And these are all very inspirational businesses. I found it very nice to look into what good they're doing through their business activities. But the key takeaway here is not just on the business level, but rather that the dominant business structure in our economy, so today it's for-profit business, drives system-wide dynamics. And I'll show you what I mean, because we're going to look first at, think of a system, a market economy that's made up only of for-profit businesses. So all of the businesses in this market are set up to deliver private financial gain to their private owners. And to do this, in doing this work, back in Lund, I was trained in systems thinking, and Anders might have mentioned it a little bit because the Club of Rome funded the Limits to Growth report that they were pioneers in using systems thinking. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of systems thinking today to describe these different economic systems. Okay, so this is a diagram, a systems diagram, and I'm going to build it up slowly. What it does is it helps us keep track of a lot of complexity in the system and how everything is connected, rather than thinking in silos, like we've already heard from the previous speakers, we should not. So, if we start with the desire for financial gain in the for-profit economy, the profit motive, drives investment, right? And this is basically the story that's in all economic textbooks. And investment drives production. And so these arrows mean that one thing causes the next thing. The plus signs mean that the factors go in the same direction. More investment, more production. Less investment, less production. So we have profit motive driving investment, drives more production, which results in more sales. which results in profit, which was sort of the aim, right? For profit. And then, of course, some of that profit gets reinvested back into the production cycle, and we can call this a reinforcing feedback loop. And what this means, this is kind of the engine of economic growth in the for-profit economy. This will just keep growing and growing and growing at a faster rate, all else equal. But at some point, some of that profit's going to be distributed to owners, because that's the purpose, right? The purpose was to enrich them. And so then they'll be able to invest that back using their profit motive, and we've got more and more economic growth. What's missing from this picture? Well, one of the first things we can say that's missing is that all of that production, all of that sales, causes environmental damage, right? We're using resources, we're using energy, materials, and we're creating a lot of waste. So there are environmental costs there. Maybe cost is the wrong word. There's environmental damage. Another thing to notice here is that we're not all just naturally endless, greedy consumers. Instead, companies have found that they have to use advertising to convince us to buy more and more of their stuff. And as the previous speakers mentioned, this advertising is all over the place. We're inundated with it. And then sort of a sneakier profit-seeking strategy that we're seeing spread in this for-profit economy is that of planned obsolescence. And planned obsolescence refers to when companies design products and services to become obsolete before they have to. So this laptop, your mobile phone, and maybe even the clothes you're wearing, all of these things are routinely designed by companies to become obsolete before they have to, so that you have to go buy a new one sooner rather than later. And of course, advertising and planned obsolescence are great profit-seeking strategies. They're very effective at increasing sales and profit, but they also, at the same time, increase environmental damage. And there are some health consequences for that as well. So what else is happening in the system? Well, over time, that handful of business owners that's receiving the profit tends to accumulate the profit, which is the rational thing to do, because remember, the purpose of this economy is for investors to get rich. So it's achieving its purpose. So they'll accumulate more and more wealth over time, and that allows them to buy more shares in more companies. And so we've got this wealth accumulation cycle, which is why we're seeing the rise of billionaires nowadays. At the same time, there's an inherent incentive for managers of profit-seeking businesses to keep wages as low as possible, because wages are a key cost of business. And here you see the minus sign. We see our first minus sign. So far we've just had plus signs. Minus signs mean that the variables move in opposite directions. So higher wages mean less profit, because wages are a key cost of business. Lower wages, more profit, and that's that inherent incentive. So we're seeing wage suppression. I forget which speaker said the labor share of income is decreasing. It was Anders. And so at the same time, we're seeing wealth accumulating in the hands of a few owners and wage suppression for the workers, who are most of us, and that's what's driving the incredible levels of inequality that we're seeing. And so what this diagram shows us so far is that the for-profit way of organizing the economy drives both environmental damage and inequality at the same time. It's very important. And a lot of the time, we're told that the solution to this is to implement taxes to redistribute the wealth, or regulations to protect the environment and workers. What that it's not a systemic enough solution, because it overlooks the fact that the profit motive also incentivizes companies and their owners to use their wealth and power to influence policy in a direction that allows them to keep getting richer. Again, that's rational behavior, because the goal of the system is for investors to get rich, so that's what they're doing. So here I'm talking about the tactics that companies use to lobby politicians, to lower taxes for them, or give them subsidies, or not implement regulations that would protect workers and the environment, but they would be expensive for them and take away from the profit. Oxfam has called this political capture, because our political system has kind of been captured by private interests. And to the degree that political capture happens, the effectiveness of redistributional taxes and regulations that are supposed to protect us gets watered down, so they're not as effective. And so here are 3 key dynamics that are inherent in a for-profit economy. These are not bad people just making randomly bad decisions. This is a system whose goal is set up to enrich private owners, and that's what it's doing. So the system dynamics of a for-profit economy is that it inherently drives consumerism, overconsumption, and economic growth. It drives environmental degradation, inequality, political capture, and then the last dynamic that I don't really have much time to go into now is market concentration. But this one is very important. And in short, it's just that because investment in this system is driven by how profitable is that company. So I'm going to invest in the most profitable company. And those tend to be the largest, most visible companies, are the ones that look most profitable to investors. So they're able to get more investment, even though they're already the largest and most visible, and they're able to use that investment and their visibility to grow even larger, take up more of a share of a market, and so we've seen all of the sectors of our global economy become taken over by just a handful of companies. Yes, and so that's part of this economy too. Now, what's the solution? What's an alternative? And here's where the model that I've been working on for the last 10 years or so comes in. We call it the not-for-profit world. Here I've called it a not-for-profit type of economy. So imagine now a market economy in which all businesses are set up to achieve social benefit, not private financial gain. And there's no private owners to receive the profit. So all of the profit goes back into social benefit. This is a very different system. So we still have some production, maybe some advertisement. I mean, we need production to some extent. We still have sales, and of course those things still cause environmental damage. I'm not a magician. And there's still some profit, but all of the profit goes reinvested back into production or into socially beneficial activities, which can then alleviate inequality. So for instance, some of that profit can be used to address homelessness, like the real estate company I showed you. And then those efforts, the use of the resources for addressing social problems, reduce inequality, and then that information goes back to guide investment. So is inequality high? Then we need more investment going into addressing that. If it's low, then maybe we don't use investment for that. Maybe instead we invest, and it's not one or the other, it's both, in environmentally beneficial activities to alleviate the environmental problems. So then replanting forests, doing regenerative agriculture, these kinds of things. So the investment and the profit can go into these other activities that help alleviate problems. And then again, the environmental damage, the state of the environment and the state of society, the public health indicators that we've taught, or that Sofia mentioned before, inform investment and economic activities. And so here we see these B. So before I had only these reinforcing loops, the R loops, which go faster and faster all the time. Now we're starting to see balancing loops in this system, which means that the system can just stay in flux because it's responding to the needs and challenges of society. It doesn't have to constantly grow like the for-profit economy. It's responding to needs. Last thing to point out here, or not last thing, I have one more after this, is that the sort of redistributional taxes that can help us alleviate inequality and poverty align with the social benefit purpose of this kind of economy. Whereas those taxes are exactly opposed to the profit motive, right? Same with environmental regulations and regulations to protect workers. That all aligns with the social benefit mission of this kind of economy. So we can have a much more balanced system. You see more balancing loops where the state comes in to help make sure that people and planet are protected. And then the last sort of thing here is that we can live more minimalist lifestyles. Like we've heard today from the previous speakers, we need to sort of rein in overconsumption so that we're all just consuming enough. Right now we have this incredibly unequal world where some communities are consuming way more than they need and other communities aren't consuming enough. They can't meet their basic needs. So if those of us who are in over-consuming communities can reduce our needs, or our consumption to just like, what do I really need? What's enough? A minimalist lifestyle. Then we can reduce environmental damage because we'll reduce the sales and production that drives environmental damage. And in the for-profit economy, minimalist lifestyles are like swimming against the tide, right? Because all of our things are being produced to fall apart. We're getting ads all the time telling us that we're not good enough, we're not happy enough, we have to buy more. But in this not-for-profit type of economy, we could actually consume less and it doesn't have to grow, so it can just adjust to that. So the dynamics of a not-for-profit type of economy is that it drives more equality because, I didn't even mention, but there's no private owners here accumulating the wealth, and there's no inherent incentive to keep wages low. So we have more equality, investment responds to social and environmental conditions, there's a potential for less consumerism, whereas in the for-profit economy, there's just not. That would allow for higher levels of well-being and less ecological destruction, and sustainability interventions that we need can be more effective. And so I just want to say, and I see many people taking pictures of the slides. We can share the slides, I think, with everybody who's been here. I don't see the not-for-profit economy as solving all of our problems, but I see it as necessary. Because I don't understand, I can't see how the for-profit economy can ever be sustainable, because it is systematically driving growth, inequality, and environmental damage. So it's necessary but not sufficient. In order to have a truly sustainable well-being economy, we also need strong democracies. We need a culture of sufficiency so that we aren't over-consuming. We need a more circular economy so that there's a lot of reuse and repair and recycling. We need ecological regeneration, and the list goes on. But one really important thing about this model is it takes us beyond the discussion about the market and the state. Because a not-for-profit market economy is completely different from the for-profit market that we're all used to thinking about. So it opens up a whole new space for talking about these issues and for political discussions and activism. The market doesn't have to be for profit. So I'll just leave you with a couple of nice images. I think this is just to show that I think social sentiment is moving in this direction kind of naturally in response to our crises. So there's also companies now that are sort of saying proudly that they're not for profit. There's a company in Wales, they're not for profit, they're for whales. So last slide here is that I would ask you to ask these questions about any sustainability strategy. We're often, we kind of have a pet project that we love, right? Whether it's renewable energy, or I see ecocide law, or these different kinds of interventions that we all have been working on. One question I would say is, how does it deal with the for-profit dynamics here? Does it actually deal with the way the economy is driving these dynamics? Could it be effective in a for-profit economy? Or might it require a not-for-profit transition in order to be as effective as we need it to be? Thank you, and you can find more resources at my website, relationshiptoprofit.com.